don't let finances
stop you from
having children.
Children are so much more important than money. Oh my gosh.
They're such a blessing.
A person, as someone who's going to
Once you see this child and then you see them growing up and who they are as an adult, would you send anyone back?
So, Ann, do you know what they say, like the official sources say it costs to raise a child from age newborn to age 18? You know what the
No.
If you look on all the news sources, if you Google it, you'll see $310,000 to raise a child. Now,
I think when we were having our children, they said $500,000 including college.
Yeah, well, this isn't including college.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's just okay.
But I can assure you that's not true. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, it's a ridiculous number.
It is ridiculous. I just remember, whatever it was with us, it was ridiculous back then what they said. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? If that were the case, no one would have children.
We couldn't afford it.
Who can afford children if that's what it costs?
I have a recommendation. If you're going to have children, don't put a number on a piece of paper to see if you can afford the child.
Right.
That is not the way to go about having children.
No, it's not. When we got married.
How much did we have between us? The day we got married, we had $1,000 between us.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. All right. Okay, that was 1988. But even in 1988, that was nothing.
Right.
It was nothing.
Right.
And we had our first child 10 months later.
Right.
We did not consider whether we could afford this child or not. Of course, I had a job and we had medical insurance. Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. But still, we had to contribute some deductible, I believe, at that point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so for me, finances was never, it never entered my mind regarding having children. And here's why. I grew up in a family, with 8 kids. And
you were number 4.
I was the 4th. I was the middle child. And I remember my father would always say that they would accept, he and my mom would accept children from the Lord, and they would trust that God would provide. Mm-hmm. I heard that over and over. Mm-hmm. And my father was a chemist at the time. And I remember there was a point when things were really, really tight financially. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I overheard my dad and my mom talking, and my dad said, I'm going to have to do something. I'll probably have to get a second part-time job to make ends meet. Literally within 2 weeks, my father was working for Quaker Oats Company at that time. And someone came down from the law department looking to train a chemist to be a lawyer because...
To be a patent attorney.
Right. And they were having trouble. They were trying to hire attorneys and then teach them chemistry. It wasn't working.
Attorneys are not chemists.
Well, at that point, they're not interested in going back to school to become a chemist.
Right.
So they decided, well, let's try training a chemist to be a lawyer. So they came down, they let people know that they were going to put someone through school. Mm-hmm. My father applied and he ended up getting it. They put him through law school. Mm-hmm. He's still working his job. He went to law school 4 nights a week.
At Loyola, right?
Yeah. And after that, pretty much all our financial stresses were gone.
In your family when you were a child.
Right.
Now I have to say, I know there are, people have different personalities, and some people are very concerned about finances or preoccupied or worried about them. Personally, I grew up not thinking about money too much. The Lord always provided. I would have, I worked, for myself. I painted houses to go through graduate school, and I never really had concerns.
You had no trouble going off on a trip
spending my money.
And like, oh, I'm out of money. I guess, let's see, maybe someone will hire me to do something.
Right, yeah, I remember going to California with a friend,
Feeding
buddy
pigs
of
or
mine,
whatever.
and ended up painting houses and doing some electrical work, even though I wasn't an electrician. You know, just knocking on doors. Hey, do you need your house painted? This house needs painting. You know, we can do it for a good price. Really? Yeah. So
I mean, whatever.
whatever. But anyway,
You weren't concerned
I
about
wasn't concerned about,
finances.
but I know some people are concerned about financing. But I really recommend that you look at children as gifts from God, not as costs
Right.
that you have that are going to be a burden to you, because this is a
Right.
person, a human being that is you're going to have this person in your life for the rest of your life.
Once you
God
see who a
willing.
child is,
Yes.
would you send it back? No.
So we'll go back to the story. So we had our first child. All right. You had quit your work to raise when
Right.
in your advanced pregnancy.
We were. I was bringing in half the income
Right.
of ours, but I always wanted to. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I knew that was best for our child, and so there's no question. Of course, I'm going to stay home.
Right.
And so our income was cut in half.
Right.
And
Right.
I think within a couple years,
It was back up where it was.
our income was back up where it was between the two of us.
Right.
I mean, the Lord was providing. He'd opened doors.
Right. Yeah, my job was developing sales for a manufacturer in Latin America, and those, you know, that
And so
worked-
then you would get bonuses.
bonuses, you know, based on you know.
the
I cracked a big account in Brazil, you know, and I wasn't a salesman per se, but I was appointed to appoint
You
distributors.
managed, right.
But I managed, but some of my income depended on my success, and I always enjoyed working in Latin America and was fluent in the languages, and it worked out.
Right.
But anyway, I didn't worry about it.
Right.
But anyway, so we went on. We had 7 children, right? Never once did we ask the question, "Can I afford this?"
Right,
Never. Did we ever? Never even
No.
occurred to me.
No.
You know, it
No,
wasn't like
it never.
an issue. So don't base your willingness to have children on cost. The $310,000 number is pure fiction. It really
right,
is.
it is because when
So what happens?
when a woman's pregnant, what happens? You know, you get close to the due date.
First baby, you have a baby shower, right?
There's a baby shower. I mean, car seats, strollers,
Boxes of
you know,
diapers.
diapers,
Little outfits.
clothing, yeah, cute little outfits. You know, all the things that you can think of. People are so generous. I remember I was quite shocked at how generous people were.
Like even the ladies in church gave you a baby shower.
Yeah, I'm like, you want to give me a shower?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, wow. You
And then
know,
there's the family and friends.
right, the family, and then I was working, so they gave me a shower.
Right.
Literally, so many of the expenses.
Showers of blessings,
Yes,
right?
literally showers of blessings.
All
So,
right.
so that would happen. Even with subsequent children, I was shocked. You know, your aunt, she always gave us a gift. Like she gave us a winter coat. She gave us different things, and I'm like, but I notice, you know, women who have gone through this stage, and particularly older women who are now in their, you know, they understand and they're more financially stable
Yeah.
or, you know, set. Very generous. People are very generous, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And then as the children grew, well, what did we have in the neighborhood? We had.
See, I did garage sales. I did garage sales growing up, and there were garage sales.
You know-
I went around in garage sales, like perfectly unused clothing.
Sometimes
you know,
with
a
the
quarter or 50 cents.
With the label still on it,
Yeah,
or
with
the
label.
tag.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what happens? People out there have like one child and say, "Oh, that's it," right? 2 child, oh, that's it.
And
well,
then
that's not our
children grow so fast, they hardly stay in any one size for
Right.
very long. So there's so much out there. that's
People don't
available.
want to throw these things out.
Right. And they'll have garage sales, or so
See,
that's the cheapest way. Or they'll donate to resale shops. Resale shops are pretty pricey.
These days.
If you can find the day that they have 50% off on children's
Go there,
clothing,
yeah.
that really
Yeah.
helps.
So at any rate, we found that, you know, equipping the children with clothing or equipment like a stroller or a little swing for a baby, whatever, that we really didn't pay anything for that stuff, you know,
Right.
or minimal or
Right,
almost
very
nothing.
minimal,
So
right.
you know, when they throw these numbers,
Or even people, you know, put stuff out to the curb, like
bicycles,
bicycles, or I mean, one of our strollers we got from the curb.
right? It was
I mean,
perfectly
we went
good.
through a lot of strollers. A neighbor, her kids were, getting older, and she gave us a double stroller.
Yeah, which we used for years.
Right. So, I mean, there's so much, or bags of clothing, even up into high school years.
Well, I remember women, like whose daughters were older. We have 6 girls, right?
Right.
1 son and 6 girls.
So they're like,
they need
Right.
they need clothing, and so they, their daughters would, go through. I don't want this anymore. I've outgrown this, and this one
She'd
woman.
bring them over, and I was always like, I was not offended.
No.
I was not put off by someone asking me, "Would you like?" I'm like, sure.
And that was kind of fun because, as the girls were like in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, we get these bag of clothes from high school girls, and they'd go through them, like, oh, this is nice or this is nice,
Right, right. And then whatever I couldn't use, which sometimes it'd be maybe half the bag, then I would pass it on.
No,
or
we also
donate
bought
it.
clothes for our children.
Yeah,
and
but the bulk of the expense we did not have.
right. So I honestly, of course, I didn't have a pencil and paper out,
Yeah.
but my impression was
We
it
didn't.
cost us virtually nothing to have children.
Yeah, and then in terms of at home, other terms of areas that we saved money. I mean, I baked everything from scratch.
Yeah.
I cooked everything from
We
scratch.
weren't restaurant people in terms of, we did occasionally.
No, I didn't buy frozen
but we didn't
dinners.
do frozen
or,
dinners. By the way, when I was young, I worked at the grocery store. The highest margin in the grocery store is on the frozen foods. That's where you're going to be spending more money. Don't budget your dinners as frozen foods if you can avoid it.
If you can't afford it,
If you
you
can't
can really
afford it.
save a lot of money.
Yeah.
At another point, you would switch jobs, and
I switched jobs. In the new company, I was the general manager. It was a smaller company, and they had not disclosed the financials to me in full. And I took the job, and I discovered the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. It was incredible. I didn't realize what I had gotten into. I left a good job for a job where I didn't have to travel. That
you
was
were a
local.
general manager.
General manager of a company, and I'm like, oh my gosh! So I had to cut the company's pay, including my own, to survive.
And we immediately, because
cut
we
back.
didn't know if you would have
Right.
any income,
Right.
we immediately cut back our expenses, which is amazing how much you can cut back.
Right.
We had been going out to pizza one night a week. We bought frozen pizzas
Right.
for that window. And the big thing that I started doing was making bread.
You baked your own bread.
Before that, I hadn't been baking my own bread. I learned how to make bread. Bread is so expensive to buy a loaf of bread at the store.
You buy $3 or $4 for a loaf of bread.
Yeah, at the time. Now it's a lot more.
No, it's about what it is. I don't know.
Well,
whatever it is.
whatever it is, I don't know what it is because
I guess it depends if you go to Whole Foods or to the.
Yeah, depending on where you shop.
Yeah.
But I found that I could make a loaf of bread for. It was
Basically-
like at the time it was like a quarter.
Yeah, 25 cents. Basically, the cost of the flour.
Well, the yeast was the most expensive thing, but if you were allowing more time to rise, you could even use less yeast.
So flour, a little bit of
yeast.
salt, yeast, and water.
So those were
That's it.
flour and yeast. The big expense.
And some pans.
Biggest expense was yeast.
And you need an oven.
Right.
Everybody's got an oven.
So
right?
I learned how to make bread. Now, of course, we're still making bread because it's great. Everybody loves it. But there's so many ways you can cut costs
Right.
if you're willing.
You can adapt.
If you're willing to have children, and if you have to cut costs, you cut costs.
Another thing about the cost of raising children, you don't need to be, and parents don't need to be in the mindset that their children each have to have their own room.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
talk about expensive.
Yeah.
So let's say you have four children. You need 4 bedrooms plus your
5
own.
bedrooms.
You need 5 bedrooms.
Right.
Like no.
Right.
What did we do?
Well, see, I grew up sharing a room with 2 sisters.
Right.
I always had a room with 2 sisters. And I knew the value of sharing a room. That even when our children were little, our first 3, I was not willing that any of them would have their own room because I wanted them to have the experience of learning to share.
Right.
We had a little 3-bedroom ranch. We didn't break into that 3rd bedroom until we had our fourth child.
Believe it or not. Okay, so 3-bedroom ranch. Ann and I had the master bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then we had 2 other bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
We
One
had,
of the bedrooms was a 9x10.
that was the middle one.
That
I
was
used it
a
as an
small
office.
one.
I used it as an office,
Right.
and then we had the front bedroom,
Which
you know,
was like a 10x12.
10
So
by
these
12.
were not big rooms.
all right. So then we had the crib. We had one baby crib in the 10x12.
Right, the
and then,
crib and
then we put a single bed in for the 15-month-old when our baby number 2 was born.
right,
All right. So he slept on a mattress.
right.
All right.
And then I think it was actually a bunk bed, but the
Well,
bottom bunk.
Bottom bunk. And then we had baby number 3, and so we had 2 little children in the bunk bed.
Yeah, and I think
We had a
Michael
bar on
was
it so they couldn't fall off.
Michael was a little over 2 years old.
When he
15 months and 18 months. What is that equal?
well, 18 months after 15 months and 18 months. That's 8,
Yeah.
3 and 3.
Yeah, so just a
3 and
little over
6.
3 years old.
Yeah, just over 3 years old when the 3rd baby was born.
Right, and he's up on the top bunk.
Yeah,
Now it had rails.
rails so
But-
he wouldn't fall off. But they didn't
He
last
loved
too
to
long.
climb up there. It was no
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. So we had. It wasn't until our 4th child was born that we went into the middle bedroom, changed that office into a bedroom. All right? And then
And then we put two.
two,
And
then
our son was sharing with his sister.
we were in that house until we had 6 children.
For, yeah, probably for where our youngest at that point was.
We didn't move until 1999, and so our 6th was born in January of '98. So we had that.
Like a 2-year-old. Yeah. So in each room we had a bunk and a single.
The point being, you don't have to have house gluttony.
And our
right?
kids thought it was roomy.
Kids don't notice. You know,
And-
I grew
and-
up in a little apartment when I was little. You don't
I don't-
notice these things.
Did you even have a bedroom?
When I was
You were in the dining room at one point, weren't
well,
you?
no, my brother was in the dining room, but that was in the apartment. But then I was little when we moved into our house. You know,
Okay.
so I got a room.
Okay.
But there were 3 bedrooms, and there was 4 kids in my family. So the 2 girls shared, and then my brother and I, who were 8 years apart, they thought it would be better if we were split apart. But anyway, little children don't notice space.
Right.
You don't need a huge house.
And Michael was totally fine sharing with his sisters up until I think we moved when he was 10 years old.
Yeah, we thought, well,
And
it's time.
we felt, okay, well, it's
10
time
years
for him
old,
to
time to get his own separate space as a boy.
Yes. But before that, they all shared.
This
and it
all, of
was
course,
great.
Calculates into the cost of raising a child.
And then they
housing.
can go to, when I went to college, I didn't have a problem with the whole sharing the room.
You're used to it.
This is what life is.
Yeah.
Other people had a lot of problems because they never shared a room.
I think the standards we have in our
They don't have to have their own room. They don't have to have their own bathroom.
right.
It's always good to rub elbows.
It is.
My
it
father
is.
said it's always good to rub elbows.
You learn to get along with people.
Right.
You know,
It's a good thing.
Yeah. So one of the things we'd recommend is don't overspend on housing. Just you don't need the biggest house, and the tremendous cost that goes with housing now. Right? People can learn to live quite happily. Think about Japan. I mean, the tiny little apartments, that people have. It's not traditionally. People can live in smaller spaces.
You get into upper years. Thinking of our kitchen, we had a eat-in kitchen, but it was a smaller area, and we just had stools, and you literally had to kind of rub elbows to get to your seat if you were in the middle. In our first home, and again, the good thing is even if thinking of teenage years, is there no communication, whatever. At least you had to say, "Excuse me,"
Right.
if you wanted to get. There had to be some communication.
So that house was 3-bedroom, but no dining room. It was a kitchen and eating area,
Yeah.
a living room, and 3 bedrooms, and then a full basement, which we had the laundry and
Right.
a play area.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was totally
That's
fine.
all we needed.
That's all we needed. I got really organized. I organized our space.
I'd say
It was-
everybody was very happy there.
Yeah. And did our kids notice our house was small? No.
It was a happy family. So, raise your children.
So don't let finances
Stop you from having
you
children.
from having children.
Children are so much more important than money. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
They're such a
A
blessing.
person, as someone who's going to
Once
live.
you see this child and then you see them growing up and who they are as an adult, would you send anyone back? You would not send
So our
anyone
oldest son,
back.
could you imagine not having
If let's say we waited for 2 years.
as so many people do, Oh, let's say
he would
somebody-
not exist.
He would not exist.
He would not exist. There's only that one
And
opportunity
now he's got 4 little boys.
with another on the way.
Yeah, with another on the way. It's like, and these children wouldn't exist.
Right.
I mean, in God's economy, way more important than how much money you have in your bank account.
Right.
He will provide.
Right. The Lord does
will
provide.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't. So that's our recommendation.
Yeah.
Trust the Lord. He will provide. Be diligent. Do your job.
Work hard. I mean,
Work
we
hard.
have to work. I had to work at home. You worked at your job.
Plan. Don't spend foolishly. But it's
Be
doable.
willing to be frugal.
Yeah.
If
You
that's
don't
what
have
your
to-
finances
You don't have to
demand.
keep up with the Joneses. We don't need a BMW.
Right. People don't need to think that you're rich.
Right. Exactly. You don't need the best house in the neighborhood or the richest neighborhood in the city.
But the Lord does provide, and
Right.
makes life very pleasant.
He does.
Yeah.
And that's our recommendation.
Yeah.